You are listening to the audio production of Unshackled, Finding God's Freedom from Trauma by Dr. Elizabeth Stevens with Thomas Jeffries, published by Focus on the Family in alliance with Tyndale House Publishers. This book is read by the author. Introduction. The first thing I recall after regaining consciousness was total blindness, followed immediately by searing pain. My head was aching and my jaw was throbbing, clenched so tightly that I thought my teeth had been knocked out. It was the summer of 2015, and I'd been descending from atop Long's Peak in Colorado's Rocky Mountain National Park. The weather was beautiful that day, and a friend and I had reached the summit by sunrise. We were on our way back down the mountain, crossing a sloping field of boulders, when I stumbled and fell. My friend was ahead of me and didn't witness my fall, but I can remember that both my hands were caught tightly in the straps of my hiking poles, and I was unable to catch myself before I fell head first into a large rock below me. Everything went white. My mind flashed back to my one previous life-threatening experience. As a child, I had slipped underwater in a swimming pool. I knew I couldn't breathe and that I was about to drown, until someone noticed me struggling and pulled me back to the surface. On that mountainside field of boulders, I felt like that drowning child again. I can't breathe. My life seemed to be fading away. As I gradually came to, I touched my face and realized that my eyes were covered with blood. I started to wipe it off, discovering that I wasn't blind after all. Blood was flowing out of a head wound above my left eye. I was in shock, dizzy and nauseated, but I managed to convert my buff, a head covering favored by mountain climbers, into a bandage. A park ranger quickly arrived on the scene and told me I needed to get down the mountain as soon as possible. He said that the nearest rescue team was busy assisting with a car accident, so my friend and I would need to descend on our own. My neck was unsteady, and I had likely experienced whiplash, but I was able to make it back to the car without falling again. As we'd encountered groups of hikers on their way up the mountain, I'd been surprised at the looks of stark horror I'd seen in their eyes. When I saw my reflection in the car, I suddenly understood the reason for them. I looked like a warrior out of the movie Braveheart, my face crimson with blood and a makeshift bandage wrapped around my head. My friend drove me to the emergency room in a nearby town, where they cleaned my wound and stitched me up. They also took a CT scan that apparently showed no immediate concerns. Then they sent me home. I didn't realize it at the time, but I had suffered a traumatic brain injury, TBI. It wasn't the first time I'd experienced serious trauma. Unfortunately, it also wouldn't be the last. At the time, I had no understanding of the journey that lay ahead of me, the time I'd spend struggling to regain some sense of normalcy. My body no longer had the same capabilities as before, and my mind wasn't much better. The person I had been before the injury seemed to have vanished. Reflecting on this experience years later, even as I still mourned for the person who had been lost, I began to realize what I've gained along the way. I started to recognize how God has used this journey to soften my heart and help me more fully experience emotions I once pushed aside. He's used the trauma that tore my soul to bring healing in areas of my life that I'd never even realized were broken. When most people hear the word trauma, they often picture serious, life-threatening situations. A military ambush, a school shooting, someone being trapped in a burning building. Others might think of victims of violent crime, abuse, or sexual assault. We might even remember those whose job it is to step in and help. The medical workers, the soldiers, the first responders, the people whose next shift on duty could bring them face to face with a deadly car crash, a natural disaster, or cardiac arrest. But much trauma is unnoticed. Trauma can occur whenever someone is overwhelmed, like when they narrowly avoid a head-on collision, face a serious illness, or experience ongoing harassment or bullying. Repressed childhood trauma can rear its head years later when an individual faces certain triggering events. Constant threats of danger or harm are enough to trigger traumatic responses. The fear of domestic violence, for example, can sneak up on a person in their own home. The diagnostic
Sample complete. Ready to continue?